mentioned growing up, you never really connected with individuals on a personal level, people within your age range. How do you feel this has affected your songwriting?
Well, it affected it, I think, largely when I was starting to write songs. I think I started earlier on than a lot of people would, because I was, most people are engaging more socially, spending their time being with their friends. But I was more of an isolated kid growing up, and so I spent more time just on my own, putting in that time into my creative efforts. Not that they were efforts at the time, it was just experimenting with, what I could do making a song. And so, by the time I'd gotten into college, I'd written a fair amount of songs and had, a good deal of experience in doing that, and was able to hone what I was doing at maybe a faster rate than would have been typical for someone else who was more socially inclined.
And at the core of your work, I mean, the lyrics are so fascinating. I mean, they're rich, they're complex, they're in-depth. What commonly decides your lyrical direction?
Oh, just whatever I'm living at the time. I try not to put too much weight into pressuring myself into finishing a lyric. If I have half of a song written, I'll let it be half of a song until I get the inspiration for the rest of it. So a lot of times lyrics will just sit in sort of a fragmented state for a while until I come across an idea that can complete it.
And music for you, I mean, you mentioned forming music and singing and not really being conscious of it. That's a pleasing way for you to work, isn't it? What is it about that approach that, really resonates with you?
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of the way you have to do it. Approaching it from a creative standpoint, it can't really feel like work. Parts of it can feel like work, realizing the physical form, you can spend a lot of time recording and sweating over it. But the creative side of it has to be kind of more pure and, sort of stem more from the unconscious. So, it's more about putting in the time, I guess, thinking about the things that you want to write about, and then, they go down deeper, and then they come back out, and it's something more interesting than you would have come across consciously.
Let's talk about Teens of Style. It's a record that's been lauded and commended. It's been out for some time right now, and I mean, looking back at the record Teens of Style, what pleased you most about your way of working for this release?
I guess that it was sort of affirmed publicly. When I was actually working on it, it was a real drag. I'll always come across these methods of recordings that will work really well for a very short period of time, and then when I try to go back to them, just the magic will be gone. And this was sort of an album where that was happening. I'd recorded the previous album, How to Leave Town, and was happy with that, how that sounded, and then I recorded Teens of Style in about the same environment, and it took a lot more to come into shape, and at the same time it was a much wider profile release, so I really wanted it to sound as good as it could. So it wasn't a very joyous experience recording it, so it was most pleasing once I was done and it was out and I could see that the work had paid off and people were liking it.
I wanted to get your views on the song Bad Role Models, Old Idols Exhumed. You said it's the only new composition on the album, the only one that's been lyrically developed. What kind of changes and transitions in sound do you feel came into play with this one?
Well, that was interesting because I was intentionally sort of doing an homage to my earlier style of writing, which was much more abbreviated. I just came across the music to it very quickly. It's just, 3 chords back and forth. And that's the whole song, and it's just a minute long. And that was something that I was doing a lot more when I was writing the original material. But it was a lot more self-conscious. And the biggest difference, I think, is lyrically, there's a lot more going on, and I tried to make every line count, whereas the earlier stuff, I'd just sort of be babbling about this or that. But this one has more of a refined quality to the lyrics.
And I wanted to get your views on Strangers, one of the top tracks on the record, it really is. And here's a track that you formed. You took a few months off, then you came back, and then you stitched it together after a few months coming back to it. I mean, is that an approach that, is the type of approach that, you'd be using in the future more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've trended more and more that way since I wrote that song. it's one of those things where if I'd finished the whole song in one go, it would just sound like the first half of that song. We wouldn't have any of the good stuff that comes in the second half. The second half is definitely my favorite part of the song, but I just had that half, the first half recorded and didn't do anything with it for a while, and then one day the chord progression and the harmonies just started occurring to me for the second part of it, and sticking them on, I knew that this was a method that was going to pay off for me.
When you overlook and assess the album, was it key to have the loss of reflection within the album as well as a humorous side to it too?
Yeah, I think that if there's one problem with the album, it's a little maybe too reflective, but I think that's because it's meant to sit in comparison to our upcoming album, Teens of Denial, which is very immediate and vital. And so this one is more of definitely a step back, a sort of retrospective into what I've been doing so far. But I tried to balance it, and make it accessible to someone who is just coming across me for the first time, not have it be just this sort of sit down and read a book experience, but have the songs themselves capture the vitality and immediacy of what they were the first time they were recorded.
And with regards to melody, why do you feel melody is harder to translate now more than ever?
I think that's probably just something that gets harder when you get older. Not that I'm old, but I'm older than I was when I started doing this. You have a period where everything seems fresh, and every time you sit down with a guitar, something good comes out. And then that just stops happening for whatever reason. You run out of chord progressions that seem fresh, and you have to move on to something else. And yeah, you just kind of get distracted by other stuff as things go on, and you feel the need to make things more complicated or intricate because what seemed fresh now just seems boring to you. But you fight against that tendency and keep trying to come up with something simple in spite of it all.
I understand that there's a hit film out in regards to the Revenant, and whilst most people regard it as one of Leonardo DiCaprio's finest performances, you decided to walk out halfway. Why was that?
I don't know. I think I should start walking out of more movies. That movie, it just wasn't my bag, and I've tried to I spent a lot of time watching long, slow art movies because I felt that it was something that I should learn to appreciate in life, and now I think I'm just done with that, and I'm going to walk out every time. It was such a nihilistic view of humanity, it seemed, at least from the first 30 minutes. It starts with an Indian massacre and goes on with Leonardo DiCaprio just having everything in life taken away from him very slowly, and I was not down to see how that unfolded, so I walked out.
But one of the directors that you are really fond of is David Lynch, and is it possible for you to put together your top 3 David Lynch movies?
Yeah, well, number 1 would definitely be Inland Empire. 2, after that it kind of breaks down. They're all very good. 2 might be Firewalk with Me, but with the deleted scenes added, because I recently watched a version that was like a 4.5 hour comped version of everything, and it was really excellent. Eraserhead has got to be in there somewhere, but it seems like Mulholland Drive also has to be in there somewhere. I guess Mulholland Drive would probably be number 3. But they're all very close together, except Inland Empire is definitely my favorite.
What defines your progression as you head forward? What matters most to you with regards to your development?
What matters most is that I don't lose sight of myself as a person or who I want to be as a person. That I don't get swept up in congratulating myself or trying to do something well. That I continue trying to be good as a person and do good things, and that includes making genuine art, I think, because that's very important to people, and genuine art was very important to me growing up, so I just want to keep trying to be genuine.